Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm trying to come on here a bit more at the moment because it's easier to write these things on here than not write these things, speak these things on here than do so much typing. So I end up doing so much typing on Instagram. And I work with all the different types of hours of the day. So often I'm working with people from Australia, which means very early mornings, and in the States and Canada, very late at night. Hence, you can tell by my hair and the fact that I've just woken up, because the hours that I work for the different time zones means that you have to, the way I have to schedule things to reach people has to mean that sometimes I have to work quite unsociable hours. But I get there in the end and it all gets covered. So, what I wanted to talk about a bit today is the recovery process and what it feels like, what actually it feels like in the journey to OCD recovery, what you experience, what the symptoms, the physical symptoms feel like, what happens. So let's take, for example, at the moment, last couple of days, I've been working a lot, pretty late. So I noticed that, I'm always aware of how much I'm sleeping, how much exercise. I'm exercising quite a bit at the moment. Whilst I'm here in Spain, I've been going out and cycling a lot, doing a lot of weights, and all that kind of stuff. Feel good for that. But then I've been neglecting sleep a little bit because I've been working late, and sometimes I've because of normal social life and family life, had to go and do different things earlier in the morning. So some days I wasn't sleeping as long as I usually would, so I felt a bit tired, and that reminded me of what it felt like when I was in the midst of OCD. Now, I've been talking a lot recently about sleep and what that means, and what people's views are on sleep and how it affects them. So let's have a little look at why I was talking about sleep and what it involves, as well as then other anxiety symptoms. So when I used to suffer from really bad anxiety, obviously then I suffered from insomnia because I was scared, what if I can't get to sleep? Then I was scared of what if I had a thought that stopped me going to sleep, or what if my health got so run down, my body got so run down from not sleeping, and so on and so on and so on, and that got worse and worse and worse, and that all became an issue, which meant that I was not able to get to sleep, which meant that I was waking up intermittently with anxiety. I mean, every bloody symptom you can think of with anxiety over the years, I've pretty much had it. Every thought, symptom, everything. People send me messages, say to me all the time, "Oh, have you had this, or did you think that?" Everything that I post about, more or less, I've had. Okay, everything I post about, more or less, I've had. All right, because that's really, I want to make that important. I didn't suffer from relationship OCD, for example. Maybe because I wasn't in a long enough relationship during the time that I was suffering from OCD. But no, that's say that I was in a relationship for about 2.5 years when I was suffering badly from OCD, but just didn't pick that. So I think what you wanna look at is with the physical symptoms and with sleep and so on. What was happening is that a lot of those things, they go on for ages, and you don't even know what's happening. Right? You, for so long you have them that you forget how much it's affecting you. Okay, so that's what I noticed in the last couple of days when I was working a lot and I wasn't getting as much sleep. I thought to myself, oh yes, I can remember what it feels like. It's so easy now to forget completely what OCD feels like, because with OCD today, it's very much something that I barely notice. So because of that, it's hard to remember what the suffering feels like. And only when it sometimes locks, I go, yes, but I can't really remember exactly what it was like to feel it, because we live our lives with sort of rose-tinted glasses. If we remembered every horrible thing that happened, women would never have another baby again, because we forget the things that were difficult or hurt and so on. That's the way life is. Now, let's have a look at what anxiety recovery felt like in terms of symptoms and everything and so on. So basically what happened was, in my OCD recovery journey, I had, I'm not talking about how I got to the recovery, I'm talking about what it felt like as I started to feel recovered. As I felt recovered, I was no longer scared. So there was no fear. There was no real fear that had gone. I could really see it differently, really see there was no need to be scared. I'd really shown the brain that anything's my perception. Even the scariest thing possible is only scary because of my perception. So in itself, it can't be scary. It can only be nothing because it's my judgment that adds to it. So I instantly felt free. I instantly, in that second, felt a lot of freedom. And that, not in that second, let's say that phased in over time, and then gradually I began to feel that. Now, when I felt that, what did that feel like? Well, everything started releasing that had been tight for so long. So my stomach, my chest, all those muscles had been tight for so long that I hadn't even realised. The neck was so tight. So that all started releasing. My jaw muscles started releasing. My heart rate was lower than it had been down. I've started to smell things and be experiencing things in the moment and feeling alive again. All of that stuff started to come back to me. It was as if I was out of that clenched trap. Now let's remember this is a phasing, but then when it eventually happened, that's how I started to feel, and that's what I'm focusing on today. How I did it, and everything is what this Instagram account's all about, and covered in the books and so on in great detail. And you will see all about that. And but I'm not going to be covering the whole journey because I cover that in 99% of these Instagram posts. So today is going to be about what it felt like. And then basically I started to experience living in the moment again. I started to feel exactly how I felt before I had OCD, because OCD was there, it wasn't there from up until the age of 15, 16 really. So then I couldn't tell the difference between having OCD. It was just like completely back to normal. Any thought that came in, I wasn't scared of it in its thought, or even if it was reality, it was gone. So there was no, my feelings towards thoughts was different. My relationship, that was very different. My relationship with OCD was different, but also what was different was that although my relationship was different with the thoughts, the uncertainty I could feel now, and I could let it flow, which was great, because now it just passed through, because now I was in a position where I could feel the distance between the thoughts. I didn't need to, like, say, for example, when we have a thought, before it would lock on tight, right? And I couldn't get away from that position. It would just lock on, and I would feel it, and it would be locked on, and I couldn't get that distance. When I was a lot more accepted, when I could really see things differently and my perspective had changed, they didn't lock, because I had deep unconditional self-acceptance. So obviously then in my day-to-day life, I didn't feel like I was connected to it, stuck in it anymore. It was like I wasn't locked. So it was very, very peaceful now for me. And I noticed very quickly that I was engaging in life, social activities, exercise, like the way I was exercising, everything just felt so much better just in everything that I was doing. And it was very, I'd lived most of my life when I'd had OCD. I used to be in the gym business. I used to own a health club, and I had a lot of people working for me, and I was under chronic stress with work and with OCD as well. And obviously OCD was a 90% struggle, so that was going on. It obviously it ruined all of my experiences. So I grew up in Spain, and I'm in Spain now, and all my vacations, or any time that I was away on holiday or anything like that, I had constant anxiety pounding me. I had it was always there. Every experience, all the time, chronic, every moment. I could remember every single moment of my life looking back at it where OCD was there in the background doing something. Whether I was in a restaurant, it was there in the background, and every time I went to that same restaurant, I could remember I had anxiety there. Well, I could remember anxiety everywhere because it was chronic, but in certain instances I could remember it more and more and more, and so on and so on and so on. So that was really important to me in terms of the OCD recovery journey, because when I suddenly felt different, what I noticed was that all those experiences were suddenly being viewed very, very differently. Before, they weren't like that. Before, they were, I was locked and trapped in it, so I wasn't experiencing those experiences. So it was very, very different. So instantly all those physical symptoms changed quite quickly as I started to feel that peace, and that came in quite quickly. Once the brain really registers it, that we're at peace and you're safe and it's all in that position, then all the physical symptoms come down very, very quickly. So that then happened. So then obviously life then, with OCD, you've got like a stacker in your brain, which we all have. So we have priority list. At the top, it will say, right, our work, family, so on and so on. OCD is always jumping itself to the top of the stacker, puts itself at position 1 constantly, all the time. So I noticed that now that OCD was out of position 1, other things had jumped up the list to position 1. So the things that were now at position 1 were other normal concerns. People always think, oh, I'm going to be content or just happy laughing down the street when I get back from OCD. That isn't the case. Although we're rational, now calmer, and we deal with all our things differently since going through the journey of recovery, it sits itself right at the top. New things like, oh God, I've got to catch up with work. Oh, I've got to do this or whatever. And these things mean a lot. And then suddenly, for me, which I cover massively in these Instagram lives, I then jump to the top of the list for me with things like, shit, I've just lost all those years of my life. God, I've got to turn my life around. I've got to get some meaning out of that because I felt like I'd lost so much. And that was my perspective at the time. So all these different things to really get up that list were crucial. And it was very, very much like that. Although we live with OCD, if you take like Howard Hughes, for example, he's one of the richest men in the world, an aviation pioneer, terrible OCD, and it affected his life, his whole life, really, really had a considerable impact on his life. He had noticed that if you watch the film The Aviator, Martin Scorsese's film The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, you will see that in the film he's and you can see through Wikipedia or anything about his life, what he did was he was still doing everything that he wanted to do. So he was still leading, flying planes, building planes, involved in his career. But then he became more and more reclusive as his OCD got worse. Now he was still functioning at a high level. Now, if he'd got better, which he never did because he never had the opportunity like we have in this day and age, which is something we're so grateful for, he would have felt and experienced that whole journey of his life very differently, because only when you're out of OCD suffering do you suddenly remember what it feels like to be like without OCD. Only when you're in that position does it suddenly become apparent very quickly. So that was a game changer for him. That was not for him, for me. That was a game changer for me, where I suddenly realised smells came back, experience, taste, living in the moment. With OCD, we're often got a glazed off look, like we're constantly locked behind a sheet of misted glass, internalized in our head, and that absolutely has us locked up. Now, when we're in OCD, we're concerned about everything. We're concerned. Everything has been made to be frightened. We've, like Claire Weeks says, one of the pioneers of anxiety, we're so locked up in anxiety that we get so caught up in it that we can't imagine anything outside of it. Everything's become scared. We've learnt to be scared of everything. Everything is being scared. So, like, let's take, for example, today, normal concerns. Okay, I'll take some normal concerns. Let's just bring right up into the now any normal concerns. Okay, I'm making an Instagram live video. So normal concerns would be, I'll be thinking, right, I'm making an Instagram live video. I have just got up, haven't even had a shower, and I'm sitting doing this Instagram live. So it might come into, well, not might, it did. It comes into my head quickly, and I do these things without any notes or anything, because I think, screw it, everything's about just doing things, getting things done, and going with it. And so I thought, What shouldn't I get ready for an Instagram live? I thought, no, who cares? It doesn't matter. What do I care about that? Straight into Instagram live. Small concern came in. Now, say that was OCD and I had a very serious concern about appearance. I would be, oh my God, what if all people think? Maybe I need to do this. And then if we take the younger generation now with Instagram and so on, they're very much into that. It's because it's so concerned about what people think. And then we have other concerns that are not just then, say, for example, what people think. OCD then exaggerates every concern, right? So it will then take one thing and then latch onto that and build and build and build and make something completely different. So if, say, for example, what would have OCD done to me in the past? It wouldn't have. I'm trying to use a subject like this. Not that this kind of subject really caused me much concern, but I'm trying to use something in the present day. OCD will have done something like, it will have gone, what will it have gone? What if you told a mistake in the Instagram live and that wasn't exactly the right way of saying it, then people misinterpreted it, and then you can't redo that, and then that's already gone out live. Those kind of things, especially when I started doing Instagram lives initially, was what if you say something wrong or do something wrong and someone criticizes that and you can't redo it because it's all live. All that stuff used to come along. you know, all different things like that. Um, so many versions of things to do with how I'm interpreted, in my life before. Not because I had over concerns. I didn't really give a damn about a lot of things. I was always pretty much like that in a lot of areas of my life, but not when it came to the OCD fears. They were hugely black and white. They were, if I was that, life's ruined, over. If I go to prison, life ruined, over. Those kind of very, very black and white, rigid thinking. That was at the core of everything. Okay, let's have a look at these questions because I haven't been through anything yet, and then I'm going to come back to what it feels like. Okay, let's have a look. A second. I hate sleeping because the intrusive thoughts always manifest in my dreams and I wake up incredibly anxious. Intrusive thoughts will manifest in dreams. They will, you have vivid dreams, waking up in sweating, nightmares, everything, feeling like you've done things, feeling like you acted in a certain way, did something, so on and so on. It will always do that. Made me feel like I'd committed murders in dreams, tortured people, every single thing. People I loved, everything. And then I thought, God, so I had nightmares constantly for years. Ongoing. Couldn't even remember a night when I didn't have one. So very much know what that feels like. You don't get over your OCD, you recover. You get used to all your symptoms you have, then you go like, fuck it, I'm used to it, let's start living for change. No, that is part of it. That's the first journey. But the symptoms go. Once you no longer care anymore about the symptoms and the core fears and the things that are in the core there that are doing that, they all go. Recovery is where you feel no chronic anxiety, no intrusive thoughts are very, very limited. You can barely notice or feel them much. You spot a couple a day or something like that. That is the difference, okay? So recovery is where you can't tell the difference between having OCD or not. Far too often people online say, I've just learned to put up with it better and so on. That's a very important part of the beginning, of midway through the journey. But the end result is not feeling anything, okay? That is it. That is recovery. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called recovery. It would be called anxiety, but learning to live with it. I was suffering to the point of suicide. Now I'm living like a boss because of Rob. Juafrid is a great example of this. A guy who's got dystonia, trembling, muscle disorder, similar to what Parkinson's is like. And he has OCD and he competes in triathlons, Ironmans, everything. Because he now says, fuck you to OCD and goes and does it anyway. And that is crucial and that is vital. And although he's not recovered yet, he's very far along his journey where you can see a huge difference from a position where he was saying to me, Rob, I remember when Alfred, and nobody doesn't mind me sharing this because he shares this in the groups, was in a position when he first came to me and he said, Rob, I nearly grabbed an electric cable today to kill myself because I'd had enough. How much can one man take? And now look at where he is. Now, I've worked with people regularly on a day-to-day basis, people suicidal in all different situations with OCD from all over the world because they feel completely trapped, lost, alone, no way out, no hope, been to therapist, no hope. Now, that is because of the nature of the disorder. Very few people truly understand it. Hence why I do what I do all day, every day, trying to change OCD worldwide, which is my goal. And I see people all the time in positions where they completely feel right at the edge. And the difference is showing them why there's hope and why their perspective that it's making them feel like killing themselves is the only way out, which actually ends all hope and is not the way. It's in those seconds that we create change there. I've never lost anyone to suicide. And with suicide, it's always a case of that perception. And it's so easy to get to that point where you just feel constantly locked, tortured and trapped by your brain. So easy to think like that. We have all been in positions where we've felt like, how am I ever going to do this? For years, I thought, how am I ever going to get better? Going from place to place, and I made it my absolute life mission I've got to get myself better from this. I've got to, and if I do, I've got to change the way this disorder is because it is not being dealt with on a world level well enough that people can get. Most people with OCD, that's severe and chronic, are suffering to some extent still. Most. And when I say most, 80-90%, right? Or more. Because if they do not understand OCD and how to get under it, it doesn't unlock. I could have sat with uncertainty for years. It was still pumping away, pounding away all day long in the background. Chronic guilt would not let up. It was just on all the time. And you could sit there and say, okay, I'll sit here with uncertainty. I'll go and do a 50-day mindfulness retreat. It wouldn't give a shit. It would just be pumping along all the time, all the time, all the time. That's how it worked. I could feel it. I used to think I was weak. I'd go to the gym more and more. That had nothing to do with it, because it's the perception. Until the perception changes, that stays present, because the brain registers the guilt and the anxiety. It does that. So that's what happens. Yes, uncertainty for lots of cases. Huge number of cases will get under it as well. And for me, at lots of times, it did have it's a huge, important part of it, but by no means all of it. Too many therapists, too many social media accounts make it out like uncertainty. You've just got to get used to that, and you're not doing it right. Well, it ain't a case of doing it right, because I could have done it every single way from every single book 5,000 times over, and it wouldn't matter. People come to me all day long that have been on 90-day meditation retreat, been to Thailand, to Buddhist monastery, been to have massage every day, every diet, running, marathons, the whole lot. Everything that you often hear people say will treat and get rid of OCD, which it doesn't. It helps take the edge off, but it will not get under it. So that's what we do, and that's what this account is all about, getting under it so you can feel a position of where you can't tell the difference between having OCD or not. That is the key. Okay, now let's have a look here. Second. Sorry, I'm being quiet. I'm just reading these. Are there more books and videos? All the books are on the reading list at the top of this Instagram page, and if you can't see them at the top, scroll down, you'll see the book list. And they're all about the books that you need to see, and the videos are often covered on Instagram stories and on the page as well. But I will have that all uploaded to the website in more detail, so you can see that more clearly soon. But I've been so busy, I haven't got around to it. Thanks, Sophia, for mentioning about the book list. Wish I could read easier. Yes, when you're suffering from OCD, it's easy to prefer audio books and so on, because it's easy to go in, because you feel like, one, you have to keep checking the line and going back and rereading and going back. Two is you feel like your brain is so zapped with anxiety or sleep or tired that you can't get through even reading. That's another one, right? You know, when you've got anxiety, or you have depression as well, or you can have sleep symptoms, physical symptoms, sensations of the brain, you don't realize how groggy and how out of tact your mind is from where it normally is. Only until I got recovered, I was like, Jesus, that's how I was living. That's how it feels. But but let me make this clear. Even when I was really anxious with little sleep, I still enjoyed a lot of life. We can enjoy life during horrendous circumstances. Otherwise, humans that were below a certain level of wealth, a certain level of health, a certain level of things, would have no happiness at all. That's not true. People are happy in prison at times. People are happy in hospitals with disease, terminally ill, all different things, right? It's perception. We can be happy in all things. Even when I had terrible anxiety, there's still moments where, you know, I was still happy, I still enjoyed something because I was a bit distracted or a bit involved in something, it still happened. But when it was the chronic guilt torturing me, that was difficult. It was difficult because it's constantly on you, telling you you're the worst thing ever, and so on and so on. Audible is good, and it will help you read things when you're stuck, and it can help, but it's always better in printed form to help go over it, to make notes, to see things better. I always recommend printed form over Audible, if possible. Oh God, I crave feeling like I'm out of OCD. I can't even imagine being free. Look at the Instagram stories today. There was a great post by some of the people from the group. If you don't try and get OCD fixed today. That's the first thing. You've got to view it as a journey that's going to empower your life and all the skills for life you're going to learn. So do not try and eliminate it right today in one go, because all that's going to do is cause you a massive problem, because you're putting too much pressure on it and it digs its heels in. Like Sophia says here, accept that you might never be without OCD is a good point. When you accept that actually this is how I am and this is how I'm going to be, that is accepting fear of fear. That gets to the core of fear too. That's important. Yes, everyone can get better from OCD once they change their perspectives and see things. Never see a case where people can't. It's all about how to get them to understand it and see that. But you have to accept that at the moment this is your situation, and you do not need it to change to be at peace and comfortable with the uncomfortable. Wear it like a coat that's uncomfortable. That's what you need to do for now. Hate this fucking illness. The amount of things I could do more in my life, it's so shit. Stop looking at the things that you could do in life. Stop focusing on what you could do and focus on what you can. Focus on what you can do to change and those things. Focusing on what you can't, the past, regrets, anything like that is an investment that gives you no return. Looking all the time into the past, focusing on that gives you no return. It never does. You're constantly going into the past thinking that changing something or whatever will make... It's not going to do it. It's like if you had a business that failed or went closed down, bankrupt, forget the word failure, anything like that. If you just went over, this is terrible, this business failed over and over and over and over and over and never rebuilt a new business, well, you would be in the same position. Or if you had a relationship and it ended, and or you've ended lots of relationships, or even if you made mistakes in the relationships that made you lose loads of relationships, you would change yourself today and then you can get another relationship. But it's the focusing on the things that can't change, that do not bring positive results in the now. Okay. Yeah, and people that have it worse, like Juafrid said, and he has a dystonia, which I used to think was one of the worst disorders to live with. And then I remember asking Juafrid, I said to Juafrid, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine living with dystonia. And he went, dystonia? I said, this isn't even that big a deal. And I was like, Jesus, he can think that, perception. And like I said to him, to show him when he was really concerned about all the things he was going through with OCD and having dystonia, but not the dystonia alone, but just all the things he was dealing with. And I said, well, you've got to think of the children that for example, have cancer. They would kill to live to 30 years old, or to have OCD. And then he thought, well, that's very true. And it's those things, those changes in perception, that suddenly really anchor in there and make a difference. Okay. Now, I've just noticed in the comments as well where Wafred has said kids with cancer, and it's been taken as an offensive thing. It certainly isn't an offensive thing. It's a change in perspective thing. It's not just like putting someone's view down and saying that view isn't worth it, is nonsense because of such and such. What he's trying to do is show you that it's actually your perception about the instance. It's not from a position of, oh, this is worse, shut up. It's not that at all in the slightest. It's about getting under it and showing a difference. That's the important thing, so that we can see things. Every day I wake up and I'm in bed, I think to myself, God, how good it is to be not in hospital today, to be able to breathe, walk. I'm not on some kind of breathing device. That stuff makes a huge difference, and it's crucially important. I think that all the time. When I was very shallow thinking before, when I was younger, when I was beginning of OCD, I used to be on holiday or in a swimming pool or in the beach or whatever. I used to think, oh my God, life could be so much better if only I had a nice car, a nice house, all this stuff. And then I was thinking, well, when I went through OCD and all the suffering for so long, I thought, well, wait a minute, there's so much more depth to life than that. If you're in the smallest house out, it's 10 billion times better than being in the hospital in pain. When you've got the flu, then only do you remember how good it is to feel healthy. I always remember that when I've had terrible flus. I always think, God, how great it is to feel healthy. And that's so important. Gratitude is one of the key components of OCD recovery. There will always be worse things, Sophia said. Absolutely. I so wish I could afford to work with you, Rob. I look forward to catching your lives. All the stuff I do on Instagram is free. All the posts, obviously, is all free. All the Instagram lives are, of course, free. The books aren't very expensive. You can get and read. So that's a great place to start if you haven't got the money for the one-to-one coaching. The one-to-one coaching is the price it is because there's only one of me. I don't have anyone else that I get to do what I do because obviously it requires a great deal of knowledge that I've had over the years, so I do it myself, and so I've got limited time. So that's why it's the price it is. And in terms of the groups is a more affordable version. A lot of people who can't afford the one-to-ones, they come to the groups, or they do a one-to-one occasionally and then do groups on and off like that. You can find ways to sort of move it and adjust it around to make it affordable, and that's what a lot of people do. Not everyone is in once or twice a week for coaching one-to-one with me. How do you help a teenager who's constantly asking for reassurance every few minutes? I'm going to cover family OCD related stuff in the next Instagram Live. I'm going to be doing a lot more on families, so I will cover that then. Albert saying there, boredom on the intrusive thoughts becomes not as fearful. Would you say that's part of recovery? Yeah, because the more you hear the thoughts over time, more that you're hearing the thoughts, and you're getting used to them and feeling them, of course you get bored. The same as the loop tape thing when we're doing loop. Well, I don't do much loop tapes because I as much as I find them helpful to some extent with certain parts of OCD, I think they're overused and they don't get under it, and people then feel more lost and stuck a lot of the time because the person just goes, well, mine's real, it did happen, so how's loop tape going to happen? It helps where it's repeated thoughts often, in getting those repeated thoughts played over and over, so you get bored of those. So that's the same in the process here of what you're talking about, hearing those thoughts over and over and them losing their power. Worse, better is just perspective. There we only own our experience and feelings. Let's have a look here. 1 second. Yeah, so in the next, just to cover this, in the next Instagram Live, I will be covering specifically for families. So going into detail about how to look after people with OCD, whether you've got a parent, son, daughter, brother, sister, boyfriend, girlfriend with OCD, all that kind of stuff. So that will be covered in detail. After people start working with you, I understand it's different for everyone, but if they're doing the work diligently, how quickly can things turn around for them? It's very, very difficult to put a deadline on OCD recovery. Because you see social media accounts, you see therapy centres, you see all different things put deadlines. That's absolute nonsense. You cannot put a deadline on OCD recovery. Anyone that says 7 days, 30 days, 3 months, nonsense. You cannot do it because it's not like that. It's not something you can do that to. You can give a rough guideline. Working with me, I can obviously make changes, we can make changes usually pretty quickly in their thinking overall initially. And sometimes some people can literally within a month be back to where they want to be, back to pretty much normal. Sometimes in 3 months. But that's not a deadline saying 1 or 3 months. I'm saying sometimes that happens. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it takes 6, 9 months, a year. Sometimes it takes longer than a year. But it depends. All of that, though, is periods of short term, not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Not that. But depends. If the person's not doing the homework or they find it hard to do things, then it can take longer. But if you do the work, for me, it took me longer. It took me to be fully recovered. It took me probably about 16 months, 9 months till I was feeling massive difference. But that was over a long period because I didn't know what to read, what to do. I was having to do so much myself, although I had therapy as well, which was a significant part in giving me a lot of the foundations that I needed. So much of the majority of the work came from my own research. Then working aside a top CBT centre based in New York, working alongside them. Then I became a motivational speaker for them. Then there was a whole long process before I got there and really reading. So I fine-tuned it into a much shorter time frame. But you can't put a deadline on it. It doesn't work like that. But usually I can make significant change very quickly. And the reason that I've got pretty much the highest recovery results of anywhere is because of how I'm behind everyone in the corner. Like if you had a coach in a boxing ring, I'm 100% behind you. You can message me between sessions. We've got groups that you can be involved in. There's 24-hour support. It's full on behind you because that's the nature of how OCD operates. It's so full on. It needs to have an approach that's the same, not a just, I'll see my therapist next week, I haven't done the homework. I'll see my therapist in 2 weeks, I haven't done the homework. They didn't give me proper homework. They told me to live with uncertainty. That's not going to happen. You've got to get a second opinion, because if you're not doing homework, or if you are doing homework, I was doing the homework, And so many people do, and if you don't do, there's reasons why you're not, and we can change that too. And it's not a judgment on you, it's to help you to end up doing it. But what I'm saying is this: if you're going from session to session and they're just doing with uncertainty, and then there's no follow-ups between sessions, you're just coasting along, plateauing, going nowhere. So we really have to get in there and make significant change. Sophia, I changed perspective after my first session. Yeah, and that's absolutely what happens in the majority of cases. There is a big perception change, because that's what I'm trying to get in there with. And Sophia she shares in groups someone that's been suffering for many, many years. And it doesn't matter how long you've been suffering or how severe the symptoms have been, that's irrelevant. People come to me, have had it for 30 years. People come to me in their 60s. People come to me from going from hospital to hospital, where they've been in with OCD. I get referred people from every centre you can think of around the world. All scenarios. It does not matter. Recovery. My account isn't called OCD Recovery only for few. It's called OCD Recovery. It's achievable by anyone, but you've got to go through the steps of making change. Let's have a look. Let's see if there's anything else. How do you know if a thought is real or OCD? Well, we know we can tell with most of the thoughts that it's like, you know, we know roughly, well, it's 1 in a billion chance that it's true, and that we can see that. But then it's going to convince us more. It's more and more real, and then you have real memories, OCDs, and all different real event OCD, and all different things. So we go with you can't tell, and we work with uncertainty, and we work with unconditional acceptance to get under the whole lot. Doesn't matter if it's real or not. Unconditional self-acceptance gets under regardless. Exactly what Quafford said there. Look, there's a lot of questions today to get through here. Rob, how did your family react to OCD? Always had a supportive family, but reasonably tough family that was sort of no problems in terms of, like, you know, you've got to get on with things and move forward. So it's always like that. But it soon became to understand OCD, but it was different then. People didn't really understand OCD. There wasn't the resources online. It was much more different. It was a hell of a lot better than 200 years ago. But very accepting, very supportive of everything I do. Couldn't ask for anything more of that today. Me trying to think of cancelling thoughts. When's your next live video? Going to try and do a couple of these a week. That's what I'm trying to do. I think it's a good structure to have, so that I get through it. It's a hell of a lot easier and faster way of getting information out. So I'm going to be doing that. Next live session, family. Imagine in about a week's time, I think. Yeah, the deadline myth that someone's just mentioned there. Thanks for the deadline myth explanation. Yeah, deadline is absolutely ridiculous. If you go on YouTube, you can see tons of videos that people put up about OCD, saying, "Oh, I got rid of my OCD." And you can't do it. 7 days, 14 days, it's ridiculous. People are normally selling an ebook at the long end of a long load of comments. You get the gist of how they're operating. But you can't do deadlines. I hear it from everywhere, not just people that are trying to sell a intensive OCD treatment course or things like that. Therapists all day long. You could go to the most reputable therapists in Manhattan, to London, to Sydney, to anywhere, and you will hear time and time again, "Oh, 2 months time, I imagine I've not had many people get after 2 or 3 months not get better." And then the worst of all is this, where people go in for a treatment thing where they say, "Okay, you've got a 6-week plan or something like that to get better, and if you don't get better in 6 weeks, you're off the course, and then you'll have to go for something else." The person feels like they're forgotten about, lost, alone, never going to get better, and they're in one of the worst cases ever. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's absolutely a situation where the person's going to feel more hopeless and alone than ever. They've already felt like that all the way along, because everywhere they've gone, they felt like it's a door closed. So deadlines is a real warning sign. Anyway, that's enough on deadlines. And I think today, is there anything else that I wanted to cover? I don't think so. I think that was the main points I wanted to get across today. Thanks for all asking questions on here. Always helps me, keeps prompting me with things that you want to ask. Always encouraging that, want more and more of that, and message me those questions to cover in the Instagram live. I can't respond to questions that aren't in coaching sessions because I haven't got the time to do that, but I can do them all on here on Instagram live or in the comments on the posts. So please keep sending those across. All right, guys, thanks a lot. See you later.